everyone, my name is Pearlescent Moon and welcome back to another video. As we found out, bees are being added to Minecraft in 1.15. Through my dabbles in experimenting with the new blocks and items within the Java snapshot, I felt inspired to build and create my own organic bee. I had actually pitched this idea to my channel moderator team, and Mikio proposed that I make it a hybrid with a dragon. I mean, I was already excited at the prospect of making a bee, and as soon as she suggested that, I was immediately hyped up about it even more. That night, I got cracking on an overdraw concept sketch. I took a regular bee image from Google, imported it into Photoshop, and color picked some rough palettes for some added details and shapes over the top. My end result looked like this. 2 days later, I started the challenge of building it. With that said, let's get right into the creation process. Starting off, I typically begin my organics by using a sphere brush from a plugin called Voxel Sniper. This allows me to build a quick body blob that I can then carve into and shape to the correct proportions of my intention. For anyone who may not know about this plugin, it can be said to resemble a typical sculpting tool that you would use in a program like Maya or Blender. You can put blobs down, lift blocks to protrude sections, cut into the shape, smoothen areas, and more. Think of it as if you had your tools to sculpt clay, and that is Voxel Sniper. I want to clarify as well that this tool does not do everything for you. I find it easier and more controlled for me to detail by hand, so this type of plugin just helps with the bulk bodywork and speeds up the process. You can check out my Phoenix Timelapse on the channel if you would like a video process without such plugin assistance. After placing my rough shaping, I go through and refine the areas into my desired form. The limbs are added once we have our base body. I simply create a line between two chosen points and then extrude the blocks into jointed legs. The next step requires additional shaping. The abdomen of a bee is typically split into sections and allows for bending. I simulated this by layering blocks onto our current form and making it look almost as if someone had squished some ellipsoids on top of each other. I furthermore roughed out the base shape of the wings with stiff lines to get an idea of what I wanted it to feel like as an overall form. Upon fiddling with the wings, I also realized that the abdomen was slightly too skinny for a bee, pushed out the sides, and then filled in the middle to fix it. This required a redo on some shape refinement, but correct proportions make it worth it. Now comes all the head details. I started by attempting to recreate the horns I added in my sketch. One set looked awkward, so I decided to try adding more surrounding the whole eye itself, as well as creating this small beak on the end of the face. I wasn't happy with it, so decided to move on and try detailing the wings. Sometimes it helps to step away from one area for a bit to then come back with some slightly fresher eyes. Unfortunately, spending time on the wings also gave me no satisfaction. My conceptual wings did not fit the aesthetic and form I was going for, and yet again also left those for later. Coming back to the head, I decided to remove the horns and face details entirely and try some middle pieces of fluff on top of the head. At this point, it kind of reminded me of Spyro, especially when I tried yet again to add horns with purple placeholder wool. Carrying on, I added spikes to the legs that attributed some of that dragon nature to the overall build. Upon looking further at bee references, I noticed that they are significantly more fluffy than a wasp would be, and decided to help identify the insect by expanding the head fluff all the way down the back, and hand building some fur on top of its main body section. As a small note, if anyone may be wondering why I'm using all blocks as my material, I actually use those as placeholders. When shaping the build, you're always changing blocks, and I find it easier to just add colour and texture after I've completed the overall form. Using bright colours also helps to show where each detail is split from the other. as well as lets me select and remove all of one type of block at once, without affecting everything around it. Next, I added some whiskers that are typically seen on an Asian lung dragon, to grant more mythical elements to the design. Granting the shape of the whiskers a dynamic flow helps provide more interest and mysticality to the build. Here's where I go back to the wings yet again. You'll find throughout this whole video that I constantly kept going back to them in order to find a design that I liked. I'm unsure how many designs I ended up with in the end, but I certainly redid them many times. By this point, I noticed that my dragon features were not really working out. However, I still felt like the spikes attributed a nice feel to the aesthetic and added 3 more large pairs along the back. I gave them a sense of place by continuing the fur even further down the body and adding to that fluffy nature. If you're ever struggling on coming up with that preferred design for a build, don't stress if it's not right the first time. Sometimes you can even make a better design by accident just by experimenting to get what you want. Here comes the exciting bit, the colouring. I drew inspiration from actual bee colours for this and chose to go with a yellow and brown type of palette. That's the typical one we all see, right? I started off by laying out all the blocks I thought I would need in a row to test out the gradients. If you guys would like a video on how to choose your palette colours and create gradients, let me know in the comments below. First comes the eye. I start from a point that I feel will be most prominent and seen the most. The eye is also typically the darkest spot on the bee, and I wanted to establish a place to stem my colours out from. After fiddling with the overall eye colour and adding some simulated reflections, I added my base colours to the full build by replacing all of my placeholder blocks with the palette I chose earlier. From this, I'm able to then go around and refine my gradient and detail sections for each part of the build. When detailing with colours, I much prefer to go around and add in all of the singular additions by hand. This allows me more control with the direction I'd like to go in. I chose to continue the simulation of fluff by colouring it as if there were hairs all bunched together, forming these solid blocks of colour and flowing down the body. This is when I can really start to see it come together. I felt the orange I originally chose for the middle fur was too contrasting to the surrounding area, nor matched anything else on the build, and henceforth changed it to yellow. It seemed to match a little bit better. Looks like we're back on the wings once again. I experimented both with full webbing and split webbing stylization. Even after all this, I still did not like it and continued to go back to the body and colour in segments. Throughout these wing variations, I chose to gather some opinions and feedback from my moderator team and the builder community alike. I had been staring at the bee for too long at this point and wanted to gather some fresh eyes to see what was going wrong. Or if I was just being too much of a perfectionist. We're all guilty of that, no shame in wanting to improve. After coming up with multiple wing types based on the feedback given, I was still struggling with choosing which one really fit the vibe. In the end, I chalked it up to a public vote, and lo and behold, the design that people typically preferred was one I did not have my eyes on for long. I originally thought it looked a bit weird and chucked it aside, and in the end, I also feel like it worked quite well and just settled on that. It pays to gather different opinions and get critique on your work, so don't feel bad for wanting feedback to improve your design. Critique is not there to insult you either, and there's a strong line between people just insulting your creation and people wanting to help by pointing out the flaws with ways to fix it. The community grows together, and I personally think that's a magical thing that we all need to embrace more. Now, I'll be honest, I have no idea what to add in voice here, as I pretty much covered everything needed about the wings. In such a case, let's kick back a little and let the music handle it. to really give this now named queen bee a sense of place, I decided to create replicas of the actual Minecraft bee mob to place around her, as if she was guiding them to a new home. This gives her purpose and a reason for being. Of course, in the end, the dragon vibe was not prominent. However, I enjoyed the journey I took to create this build. Even though it may not be a full hybrid, at least we have a fancy schmancy queen bee, right? Some may say it looks like a wasp, and I personally would not blame them. After all, the sharp tip I added as part of the dragon vibe made it look like the long stinger of one. Anyway, that's it. Our build is done and she is flying free in the vanilla Minecraft world, leading her worker bees to a new life. Thank you guys so much for watching. I prepared a short cinematic to allow an adequate view of the completed construction to end the video for today. I hope you've enjoyed and I'll see you in the next one. Bye guys!